today is December 1st. Merry Christmas. Our topic for today is about evolutions or the evolution of Philippine politics and governance. As you can see, this photo represents the pre-Spanish era. This one during the Spanish era. And this one is the American era. And this one is the Japanese era. So ano ba ang difference ng mga governance in those era? Let's see. So the historical development of Philippine politics and government can be studied through its evolution from the prehistoric period, which contributed to the formation of modern Philippine politics and governance. So bago pa pumunta ang mga Spaniards dito, there is an existing government na sinusundan ang mga Pilipino. And later on, because of the evolution of the governance, nagkaroon ng improvement na dagdagan, may mga sinunod tayo at inadapt from those people who colonized us. So first is the pre-Spanish government. The early Filipinos had a government which they called balangay. The head or the leader was called a datu or raja, who was assisted by the elders in the community. All powers of the government were exercised by the datu or raja. He was the chief executive, lawgiver, chief justice, and military head. So, during the pre-Spanish era, or the government, nung wala pang mga Spaniards na nag-colonize sa atin, there is this existing government called balangay. At ang namumuno sa mga balangay ay ang isang datu or raha. Ang isang datu or raha ay katungkulan din niyang gampanan ang pagiging chief executive, ang pinakamataas na posisyon, takapagbigay ng batas, lawgiver, takapagpataw ng parusa sa mga nagkakasala, at siya ang head ng military noon. During those time, during the pre-Spanish era, may tatlong classification or caste ang mga Filipino. So the first one or the highest, and the highest one is the Maharlika, the nobles, yung mga mayayaman. The next one is the Timawas. Timawas are also ka-level niya ang Maharlika. Let's see later on. And the low, ang pinakamababa ay ang mga alipin or the slaves. So the datu or the raha came from the Maharlika, the upper class. So this is a photo of the Maharlika or the nobles. The Maharlika are the upper class, right? Ito yung mga taong nakatira noon sa Luzon. They were called Maharlika. In Visayas, they were called Timawas. So yeah. So the Maharlika and Timawas are just the same. Nagkakaiba lang ang tawag sa kanila. And the alipin later on. So the social stratification, the Maharlika or Timawa, intermediate class of men who had enough land, those who rendered services to the ruler and do not work on field. So ito yung mga malalawak ang mga lupain, nagpapatrabaho. And the alipin, yung mga tagalingkod. Next photo is an example of raha or a datu. Next one. The government in the Philippines under the Spanish rule. So ano nga ba ang nangyari noong panahon ng Spaniards or the Spanish? The Philippines was governed indirectly by the King of Spain through the Viceroy of Mexico. When Mexico, also a former colony of Spain, gained her freedom in 1821, the Philippines was ruled directly by Spain until 1890. So, kaya tinawag na Philippines ang Pilipinas ngayon ay dahil sinunod ito sa pangalan ni King of Spain, which is King Philip. That's why we are called Philippines. So during that time, our direct chief executive was the King of Spain. Okay? So ayan. So the treatment of the Filipinos noon, especially the lower class, were slaves. So ayan. The national government was headed by Spanish Governor General, who was appointed by the King of Spain. The Governor General was at time called the representative of the King of Spain, or the little king in the Philippines. So because the Spain, or ang Spain noon ay napakalayo, the King of Spain had a Governor General in the Philippines. He is the representative of the king, kaya ganun. But then yung mga utos ay galing pa rin sa hari ng Spain. In theory, he was the highest government official in the country and practiced phylocracy, rule of friars, exists thus overpowering the Governor General. So dito, di ba, nakita nyo naman noon na some of the most powerful people were the friars, the mga pari. Yan. So, most of the time noon, ang mga nasa position sa government were pari. Because of course, Catholicism were adopted, or galing ang Catholicism ng Pilipinas sa mga Spaniards. That's why, yeah. Below the national government was the alcaldía in the provinces, headed by the alcalde mayor, the pueblos, the town, which were led by the gobernadorcillo, the little governor, and the barangays, which were led by the cabeza de barangay. So ngayon, the provinces, or before, ang mga probinsya daw ay pinamumunuan ng isang alcalde mayor. Ang mga town ay pinamumunuan ng isang gobernadorcillo, at ang mga barangay ay pinamumunuan ng cabeza de barangay. Pero ngayon, ang provinces na ay pinamumunuan ng isang gobernador, ang mga towns ay pinamumunuan ng isang mayor, at ang mga barangay ay pinamumunuan ng mga kapitan. So, you see, we adopted some of the yung mga clusters of positions sa government, di ba? So, another one, Andres Bonifacio organized the Katipunan, a secret revolutionary organization of the Filipinos. Its aim was a complete separation from Spain. So, because of the colonialization of Spain, which was 333 years. So, here comes Andres Bonifacio. Pinamunuan niyang isang revolutionary grupo na tinawag nating Katipunan. So, it precipitated the Philippine Revolution on August 26, 1896. It was replaced by another government when it was discovered by the Spanish authority. So, nung nalaman na nagkakaroon na pala ng revolutionaryong grupo, ay pinalitan nila ang grupong iyon para hindi parang ma-abolish kasi nalaman na ng mga Spaniards. The new government was headed by General Emilio Aguinaldo as president in the Tejeros Convention. So yesterday, we celebrated the Andres Bonifacio Day, diba? Yeah. This is the KKK. Excuse. So the Biak na Bato Republic was created by General Aguinaldo on November 1, 1897. From the Katipunan, we had Biak na Bato. Its aim was separation from Spain and formation of the Philippines as an independent state. So the republic exists until December 15, 1897, with the signing of the Pact of Biak na Bato. So ayan. So our official first president was General Aguinaldo because of this Biak na Bato Republic. Ayan. It resulted in the revolutionary exile of Aguinaldo and his men to Hong Kong, provided that General Primo de Rivera would pay $1,800,000. On May 24, 1889, General Aguinaldo established a dictatorial government when he returned from his exile in Hong Kong. So, ayan. Because nalaman ng mga Spaniards na nagkakaroon na pala ng tiyak na Bato Republic, pinatapon sila sa Hong Kong. Pero nung nakabalik sila Aguinaldo dito sa Pilipinas, on May 24, 1889, namuno ulit siya ng isang dictatorial government. The notable achievement of the dictatorial government were the proclamation of Philippine independence and the reorganization of local government. Ayan. So I guess we should at least dapat si General Aguinaldo ang ating national hero kasi he did a lot of things for us. A revolutionary government replaced the dictatorial government, still with General Aguinaldo. On January 23, 1899, the first Philippine Republic was established with General Aguinaldo as the president. So, ayan, that is the Spanish era natin, Spanish government. So, ang sumunod na sumakop sa atin ay ang mga Amerikano. Ano naman ang nangyari noong mga panahon ng Amerikano? The Americans started the military rule in Philippines on August 14, 1898. The President of the United States delegated his authority to the military governor who exercised all power of the government. The Spooner Amendment ended the military regime in the Philippines. It was changed into civil government headed by civil governor on July 4, 1901. The title was changed to Governor General on February 6, 1905. The Governor General has legislative power and he was the President of the Philippines Commission from 1901 to 1907. So, noon, dito sa American regime, ang akala noon ng mga Pilipino ay tinutulungan sila ng mga Amerikano. But it was like sugarcoating that they are colonizing the Philippines. So, the Philippine Commission was the sole law-making body of the government. Eventually, this became the upper house of the legislative department of the Philippines. So, ayan. Dito natin sa American regime natin na-adapt ang pagkakaroon ng upper house and lower house, yung legislative department. Yan yung sinasabi niya. The Jones Law of 1916, which became the fundamental law for the Philippines, vested the legislative power in an all-Filipino, all-law-making body composed of the Philippine Senate and the House of Representatives. So here, under the Jones Law, sinasabi niya na ang mga senador at House of Representatives daw ay pinamumunuan o kinabibilangan ng mga Pilipino lamang, all Filipinos. Yan. So, malaking tulong ang mga Amerikano noon sa pagbuo natin ng isang matibay na gobyerno. Yan. The Commonwealth Government. Ano naman itong Commonwealth Government? The Tithing McDuffie Law in 1934 established the Commonwealth Government. It was a form of government in transition toward independence. It provided for a 10-year transition period after which the Philippine independence would be proclaimed and established. So, ito na nga, di ba? Ang akala noon, tinutulungan tayo ng mga Amerikano, pero behind yung pagtulong nila sa atin, they were taking advantage of our resources before. And other mga ginagawa nilang mali. So the Commonwealth Government was inaugurated on November 15, 1935. The first national election in the country was held September 12, 1935 by Manuel L. was the president and his vice president was Sergio Osmeña. The Commonwealth Government functioned in exile during World War II in Washington, USA. From May 13, 1942 to October 3, 1944, after which it was established in Manila on February 27, 1945. So ang unang presidente under the Commonwealth Republic was Manuel L. The USA turned over to a Filipino president the full power and responsibility of the Commonwealth government under the 1935 Constitution. So this is Manuel Quezon, this is Sergio Osmeña. Ayan, so akala natin nun wala nang mananakop sa atin, pero hindi. Sinakop na naman tayo ng mga Hapon. Ano naman ang natutunan natin sa mga Hapon? Or ano ang nangyari noon? The Japanese military administration was established in Manila on January 3, 1942. A civil government, which was called the Philippine Executive Commission, was established with George P. Vargas as chairman. It has legislative and executive powers, but laws enacted, though, were subjected to approval by the Commander-in-Chief of the Japanese forces. The Japanese-sponsored Philippine Republic with Jose P. Laurel as the president was inaugurated. So during this time, diba, we were colonized again by Japanese, but then there is a direct command under Japanese, but then we have president, which is Jose P. Laurel. So ayan. So ang mga eras na napag-usapan natin is this pre-Spanish, the Spanish, the American, the Commonwealth, and the Japanese. So, may mga natutunan tayong mga about governance sa mga panahon yun, di ba? Then, in-apply natin sa ating form of governance ngayon. Sa Amerika, natutunan natin ang mga executive, legislative, judiciary, and many more, di ba? So, ayan. That is the evolution of Philippine politics and governance. Pumunta naman tayo sa presidents of the Philippines. So, sino ba ang mga tao? Malalaman natin. So, since independence in 1898 and the ratification of the Philippine Constitution in the First Republic, there have been 16 presidents, starting with General Emilio Aguinaldo to Rodrigo R. Duterte. So our first president is General Emilio Aguinaldo. One way to remember the first president of the Philippines First Republic is to look at the 5 peso coin. General Emilio Aguinaldo's face used to grace the 5 peso bill, which is not used anymore. The back of the bill shows him holding the Philippine flag at the celebration of the Philippine Independence Day. He led the Filipinos into fighting against the Spaniards and the Americans. So, kapag nakikita nyo ang inyong 5 piso, yan ay si Emilio Aguinaldo. Siya ba yan? But then there was a bill before, yung perang papel, which is a green one, 5 peso billion, and si Emilio Aguinaldo ang nandun. So sabi ko nga kanina, he led the Philippines right after the Spanish regime. What are his contributions and achievements? He is the president of the First Republic. Signed the Pact of Biak na Bato, creating a truce between the Spanish and the Philippines revolutionaries. Known as the president of the revolutionary government, led the Philippines in the Spanish-Philippine War and the American-Philippine War. He was the youngest president, taking office at the age of 28. He is also the longest-lived president, passing away at 94. So, ayan. Excuse. So the next president that we're going to talk about is Manuel L. Quezon. After 34 years of insular government under American rule, Philippine voters elected Manuel Luis Quezon as the first president of the Commonwealth of the Philippines. He is known as the father of national language or the ama ng wikang pambansa. He died of tuberculosis in Saranac Lake, New York. So to better remember it or him, Manuel L. Quezon, he is the father of national language. Siya ang unang presidente sa Commonwealth Republic natin. So what are his contributions and achievements? First Senate President elected as President of the Philippines. The first President elected through a national election. The first President under the Commonwealth. He created National Council of Education. He initiated women's suffrage in the Philippines during the Commonwealth. Approved Tagalog Filipino as the national language in the Philippines. Appeared in the 20 peso bill. A province, a city, a bridge, and a university in Manila are named after him. His body lies within the special monument in Quezon Memorial Circle. So naiintindihan nyo naman yung mga yun. But then, let us emphasize this one. Women's suffrage in the Philippines during the Commonwealth. So, suffrage meaning the right to vote. So, siya daw ang nanguna sa pagkakaroon or sa pag-approve na ang mga babae ay kailangan ding bumoto or mag-vote. So, ayan. Suffrage. Tandaan. Suffrage. Ayan. That is Manuel Quezon. Next one is Jose P. Laurel. Jose P. Laurel's presidency is controversial. He was officially the government's caretaker during the Japanese occupation of World War II, criticized as a traitor by some. His indictment for treason was superseded later by an amnesty proclamation in 1948. So, ang dito, let us focus on this statement. Sana yan? Treason. Sorry. Treason meaning nagkiki-communicate siya sa mga Japanese parang traidor. Treason. Contributions and achievements. Since the early 1960s, Laurel considered a legitimate president of the Philippines. He organized Kalibapi, Kapisanan sa Paglilingkod sa Bagong Pilipinas or Association for Service to the New Philippines, a provisional government under Japanese occupation. He declared martial law and war between the Philippines and the United States in 1944. With his family, he established the Lyceum of the Philippines. Next is Sergio Osmeña. Sergio Osmeña was the second president of the Commonwealth. During his presidency, the Philippines joined the International Monetary Fund. So, Sergio Osmeña was also the vice president of Manuel Quezon, di ba? Manuel Luis Quezon. So, he became a president. So, here in International Monetary Fund, ito yung, di ba? That's why may specific value ang peso into US dollar and parang may katumbas na pera, International Monetary Fund. So, ayan. What are his contributions and achievements? He became president at 65, making him the oldest person to hold office. First resigned to become president. He joined with U.S. General Douglas MacArthur in Leyte on October 20, 1944 to begin restoration of Philippine freedom from Japanese occupation. The Philippine National Bank was rehabilitated and the country joined the International Monetary Fund during his presidency. Bell Trade Act was approved by the U.S. Congress during his presidency, and he appeared on the 50 peso bill. So his greatest contribution was we were able to join International Monetary Fund. Next is President Manuel Roxas. Manuel Roxas was the 5th president of the Philippines, the 3rd and last president under the Commonwealth Republic, and the first president of the Third Republic of the Philippines. He held office for only 1 year, 10 months, and 18 days. So bakit Third Republic na, di ba? So first we have the Malolos Republic, second is we have the Commonwealth Republic, and the Third Republic. What are his contributions and achievements? He inaugurated as the first president of the new republic after World War II. He was able reconstruction from war damage and life without foreign rule began during his presidency. Under his term, the Philippine Rehabilitation Act and Philippine Trade Act law were accepted by the Congress. He appeared on the 100 peso bill. So here, let us focus here. Reconstruction from war damage and life without foreign rule began. So, di ba, pagkatapos ng giyera kasi, every country is rebuilding their territories, their nations, di ba? And as President Manuel Roxas decided to build the Philippines alone without the help of any other country. Why? Because if another country helped us again, later on they will again colonize us, di ba? So it is a preventive act that he did to us. Kapag tinulungan na naman tayo ng, halimbawa, tinulungan tayo ng China. So, baka mga inchik na tayo ngayon, di ba? Ganon. Next, Elpidio Quirino. Elpidio Quirino served as vice president under Manuel Roxas. When Roxas died in 1948, Quirino became the president. So what are his contributions and achievements? Hukbalahap guerrilla movement active during his presidency, created Social Security Commission, created Integrity Board to monitor graft and corruption, and the Quezon City became capital of the Philippines in 1948. So here, the board to monitor graft and corruption. So because ang graft and corruption kasi is yung mga hidden na ginagawa ng mga politicians, diba? Nangungupit sila, kumukuha sila ng mga taxes natin. So, he created International Board to monitor graft and corruption. Next is Ramon Magsaysay. Ramon Magsaysay was born in Iba, Zambales. He was a military governor and an engineer. He died in an aircraft disaster while boarding the presidential plane. So here, he was the good, siya kasi ay hindi siya pinanganak na mayaman. So, he acted like parang regular na tao. Then, he was loved by many Filipinos, but then he suddenly died because of an aircraft disaster. Yung sinasakyan niyang plane, nag-crash, ganun. What are his contributions and achievements? Hukbalahap movement killed during his presidency. He was the chairman of the Committee on Guerrilla Affairs. First president sworn into office wearing Barong Tagalog during inauguration. Presidency referred to as the Philippines' golden years for its lack of corruption. Philippines was ranked second in Asia's cleanest and well-governed countries during his presidency. Established National Resettlement and Rehabilitation Administration, among other agrarian reform. So, as I have said, during his time, he was loved by many because ang good daw ng status ng Pilipinas noon. But then again, a disaster came. He died. And it was a controversy because parang it's an inside job, ganun. Parang sinadya siyang patayin kasi, di ba, if you are doing good, others will pull you down kasi. Ayan, si Ramon Magsaysay. Next is Carlos P. Garcia. He was a lawyer, a poet, a teacher. Carlos P. Garcia also served as a guerrilla leader during the Pacific War. Born in Bohol, Garcia served as vice president under Ramon Magsaysay and as Secretary of Foreign Affairs for 4 years. He became president when Magsaysay died. So, ayan. So he was not an elected president, rather he replaced Ramon Magsaysay when he died. So what are his contributions? What were his contributions and achievements? He was known for his Filipino First policy, which favored Filipino businesses over foreign investors. Established the austerity program focusing on Filipino trade and commerce. So, di ba, ang sinasabi natin noon, Pilipino muna. Siya ang nagpasimula noon. Filipino muna. Filipino products muna. Mag-travel ka muna dito sa Pilipinas. Tangkilikin muna ang mga sariling atin. So, siya ang nag-conceptualize noon ng Filipino First policy. He was also known as the Prince of Visayan poets and the Bard from Bohol. Cultural arts was revived during his term and was the first president to have his remains buried at the libingan ng mga bayan. Next, Diosdado Macapagal. Born in Lubao, Pampanga, Diosdado Macapagal was a lawyer and a professor. His daughter, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, was the 14th and second female president of the Philippines. So what are his contributions? He established the first land reform law, allowing for the purchase of private farmland to be distributed in inexpensive small lots to the landless. Placed the Philippine peso on the currency exchange market. Declared June 12, 1898 to be Philippines Independence Day. Signed the minimum wage law and created the Philippine Veterans Bank. So here, dito sa na-establish na law, which is land reform, because diba, lands before were hindi either pagmamay-ari ng isang tao or walang nagmamay-ari. That's why, because of land reform, yung mga walang nagmamay-aring mga lupain ay nagkaroon, i-distribute sa mga Pilipino. Kasi most of the lands before were owned by yung mga mayayamang Espanyol, di ba? Kaya may mga hacienda na tinatawag natin. Ayan. So, he helped a lot of Filipinos to have their own land. And he signed the minimum wage law. Siya ang nagpasa ng batas na magkaroon ng yung may standardized na bayad sa isang araw. Paano pag walang ganon, di ba? So, businessman or yung mga employers ay silang magdidikta ng presyo ng arawan ng isang empleyado. Paano pag dinicide lang niya na 100 pesos per day, di ba? E di kawawa naman yung isang manggagawang Pilipino. So, ayan. Next is Ferdinand Marcos. President Ferdinand Marcos. Born in Sarat, Ilocos Norte, Ferdinand Edralin Marcos was a lawyer and Senate President for 3 years. He was president for 21 years. He ruled under martial law and his dictatorship was known for its corruption and brutality. Marcos was removed from office after the People's Power Revolution. So, he was the longest reigning president dito sa Pilipinas. O, di ba? 21 years siyang naging presidente dito sa Pilipinas. Ang tagal nun. What are his contributions and achievements? He was the first Filipino to win a second term, declared martial law on September 22, 1972. He increased the size of the Philippine military and armed forces. By 1980, the Philippine GNP was 4 times greater than 1972. By 1986, the Philippines was one of the most in-depth countries in Asia. Build more schools, road, bridges, hospitals, and other infrastructures than all former presidents combined. The only president who remains are interned inside a refrigerated crypt. So let us focus here. The first Filipino to win a second term. By the Constitution, it is not allowed to have a second term. Once ka lang magiging presidente. But because there was we will discuss that later on. So he was the only president that had his second term. So ayan, here, let us focus here. By 1980, the Philippine GNP was 4 times greater. So ang yaman ng Pilipinas noon, sabi nga dito, was one of the most in debt. Ay, hindi. The GNP daw, yung kita, malaki. Pero madami tayong utang. Yan. In debt. Ayan. So, madaming kita noon pero umuutang tayo or madami tayong utang. Next is ang pumalit kay Ferdinand Marcos. Corazon Aquino. The first woman president of the Philippines and the first woman to become president of an Asian country. Corazon Aquino was born in Paniki, Tarlac. She was a prominent figure in the People Power Revolution that brought down Ferdinand Marcos' dictatorship. Her husband, Benigno Aquino Jr., was a senator during the Marcos regime and its strongest critic. He was assassinated while Marcos was still in power. So, diba, there was a People Power Revolution before because Filipinos were resisting na because of the dictatorship of Ferdinand Marcos. And yung feeling ng the People Power nag-reign yan nung napatay or pinatay ang kanyang asawang si Benigno Aquino Jr. So, di ba, yung mga Aquino kasi noon ay pinatapon sa Amerika. Then, pinabalik sila dito sa Pilipinas. Then, nung pababa na si Benigno Aquino sa kanyang plane, binaril siya. Then, because of that, naggalit ang madaming Pilipino. Nagkaroon ng People Power Revolution at nagkaroon ng election. Then, during that election, nanalo si Corazon Aquino. So, yan. So, the highlight of Corazon Aquino was the People Power Revolution, and he was the first president of the Philippines or any Asian country. So, what were his or her contributions? She restored democracy, abolished the 1973 Marcos Constitution, and ushered in the new Constitution of the Philippines, reorganized the structure of the executive branch of government, signed the Family Code of 1987, a major civil law reform, and the 1191 Local Government Code, which reorganized the structure of the executive branch of the government. Initiated charitable and social activities helping the poor and the needy. Named as the Woman of the Year in 1986 by Time magazine. On the new 500 peso bill, together with her husband, Benigno Aquino. Received honor and awards including 100 Women Who Shaped World History, 20 Most Influential Asians of the 20th Century, 65 Great Asian Heroes, J.W. Wilbright, prized for international understanding. So, ang dami niyang ginawa, di ba? So, dahil si Marcos noon ay nagkaroon siya ng constitution, gumawa siya, inibahan naman niya or dinagdagan din niya. Inibahan niya at dinagdagan niya ng family code. Ayan. Next is Fidel V. Ramos. Fidel V. Ramos was the chief of staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Before he became president, he was also a civil engineer. As president, he restored economic growth and established in the country and stability in the country. Even during the Asian financial crisis in 1997, he is the first and so far the only non-Catholic president of the Philippines. So from the Armed Forces of the Philippines, naging president is Fidel V. Ramos. Yan. What were his contributions? He oversaw Philippine economic growth, presided over celebration of Philippine Independence Centennial in 1998, received bright knighthood from the United Kingdom by Queen Elizabeth, hosted the 4th Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Leaders Summit. Philippine Stock Exchange became an international favorite during his presidency. Death penalty reinstated while he was in office. Signing peace agreement with the rebel Moro National Liberations Front. So from there, let us focus here. So, death penalty reinstated while he was in office. So, pinagtibay daw ang kapurusahang death penalty. Ayan. And he was the first and only non-Catholic daw. Next, Joseph Estrada. Known as ERAP, Joseph Estrada was the first president who had been a famous film actor. His presidency was controversial. During his years in office, economic growth was low, and he faced impeachment proceedings. He was ousted from the presidency in 2001. He was later convicted of stealing from the government, but was pardoned. He ran unsuccessfully for president in 2010. So, he is a film actor. Isa siyang aktor, then favorite siyang aktor. Lumaban naman siya bilang isang presidente. At dahil wala nga siyang karanasan sa pag-govern ng isang bansa, nagkaroon ng pagbaba ng yung status ng Pilipinas noon. Bumagsak ang Pilipinas noon. The economic growth was slow. At dahil ang daming corruption noon, he faced impeachment. Pinapaalis na siya sa kanyang katungkulang impeachment. Then, he was ousted. Natanggal na nga siya noong 2001. Ayan. Yan ang ibig sabihin niyan. Tapos, di ba, nagkaroon ng proceedings daw. He was convicted na patunayan. Pero, pinardon siya. Pardon meaning, pardon. Yun, pardon. Basta pardon. The contributions and achievements. During his presidency, Moro Islamic Liberation Front headquarters and camp were captured. Moro Islamic Liberation Front, yung mga rebelde. Okay? Pinahaba lang yun. Rebelde. Joined other leaders and politicians who tried to amend the 1987 Constitution. Cited as one of the 3 outstanding senators in 1989. Among the Magnificent 12 who voted to terminate the agreement that allows for U.S. control of Clark Air Base and Subic Naval Base. So here. So dito, inibahan na ang constitution natin. That's why, yeah, later on. Next is Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. Gloria Macapagal Arroyo was the 14th president of the Philippines and the second female president. The Oakwood Mutiny occurred during her term. Arroyo oversaw road and infrastructure improvements and higher economic growth that presidents before her, but there was also controversy. The so-called Hello Garcia controversy involved recording that allegedly captured Arroyo ordering the rigging of the election that put her in office. In 2005, Arroyo faced impeachment proceedings related to the recordings, but the impeachment failed. After she had left office, Arroyo faced additional charges of election fraud and misuse of state funds. So here, let us focus here. Um, so dito daw, the road and infrastructures improved and the higher economic growth. So umunlad ang Pilipinas during her time. But then, there was this scandal. Hello Garcia ang tawag. Dito noon, I can still remember, tumawag siya sa isang tao. Then, he was, or she was saying na, kamusta naman yung result ng election, ganito ba, ganito ba. That's why, they tried to impeach her. Nagkaroon ng impeachment proceedings. Pinapatanggal siya sa position niya nun. But then, the impeachment failed. So, hindi natuloy. Then, nung hindi umalis na siya or nung natapos na ang kanyang pagiging president, kinasuhan siya ng election fraud and misuse of state funds. Election fraud ay yung pagmamanipula ng election. Election fraud ang tawag doon. That's why she's currently under hospital arrest kasi because of the charges against her. Kasi may sakit siya and then hospital arrest siya. Okay. But then she's now a congressman again or congresswoman representing her district. What are her contributions and achievements? Second female president of the country. The first and only female vice president of the Philippines so far. Former economist professor at the Ateneo de Manila University, where current President Benigno III was one of her students. Diba? Teacher siya. Estudyante niya sa Benigno Aquino. Ex-classmate of former US President Bill Clinton at Georgetown University. So, naging kaklase niya ang former president ng Amerika, si Bill Clinton. Oversaw higher economic growth than the past 3 presidents before her. So, umunlad ang Pilipinas noong panahon niya. Peso became the best performing currency of the year in Asia. EVAT law was implemented under her term and currently on the 200 peso bill. Nandun pala siya sa 200 peso bill. Ngayon ko lang alam So, ayan. So, EVAT is yan ay VAT yan, tax. Yan, EVAT. So, ang daming nangyari sa panahon ni Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo. Maybe you were just a kid or mga baby pa siguro kayo ng mga panahon to, di ba? Kaya hindi nyo matandaan. So, next is Benigno Aquino III. So, Benigno Aquino III joined the House of Representatives and the Senate before his presidency. He is the first president who is a bachelor. Binata. He is unmarried and has no children. So, what are his contributions? He created the no wang wang, or yung bawal na yung siren kapag yung wang wang. Ano yun? Sa mga private cars or sa mga sasakyan ng mga politicians, ganun. Appointed statesman Jesse Robredo to serve as Secretary of Interior and Local Government in 2010, where Robredo served until his death in 2012. He was the one who initiated K-12 education in the Philippines. So, siya ang may pakana ng K-12 kung bakit ka may senior high school ngayon. Renamed the Office of the Press Secretary to Presidential Communications Operations Officer and appointed new officers. He suspended allowances and bonuses to government-owned and controlled corporation and government financial institutions board members. Then, tumaas din ang ekonomiya ng Pilipinas noong panahon niya. Ayan. So, that is Benigno Aquino III. So, the highlight here is he initiated the K-12. Kung ba may senior high school ngayon. Then, lastly, our current president is Rodrigo R. Duterte. So, Rodrigo Roa Duterte was born on March 28, 1945. He was also known as Tigong and Rodi. Is a Filipino politician who was the 16th and incumbent president of the Philippines and the first from Mindanao to hold the office. He is the chairperson of PDP Laban, the ruling political party in the Philippines. Duterte took office at age 71 on June 30, 2016, making him the oldest president to assume the Philippine presidency. The record was previously held by Sergio Osmeña at the age of 65. Born in Maasin, Southern Leyte, Duterte studied political science at the Lyceum of the Philippines University, graduating in 1968 before obtaining a law degree from San Bede College of Law in 1972. He then worked as a lawyer and was a prosecutor for Davao City before becoming vice mayor and subsequently mayor of the city in the wake of the Philippine Revolution of 1986. Duterte won 7 terms and served as mayor of Davao for over 22 years. So, that is Rodrigo Duterte. Bakit wala pang contributions and achievements si Rodrigo Duterte? Because he is currently serving our country. After his term, we're going to will know what are his achievements and contributions to our country.